Chapter 3173_0 Wing got promoted into a bronze guild. Zero Wing got promoted into a bronze guild. Amazing. Zero Wing actually got promoted into a bronze guild already, as expected of the guild responsible for starting the Myriad World's descent. With this, our local guilds have finally surpassed the foreign gods' domains guilds in something. I just checked, and it seems that a bronze guild has 30,000 special authority slots that can be used to gain priority entry into any NPC city. Crap. Doesn't this mean that Zero Wing's members can freely enter even NPC cities that have already fallen into the hands of other gods' domains? This means that the foreign gods' domains powers will have difficulty taking Zero Wing's territories even if they want to. Zero Wing can make a fortune by using this advantage to trade with other local powers. Not even the 5 great super guilds can be a match for Zero Wing now since they have occupied only one NPC city. At most, the auction house in their city will be connected with the auction houses of several neighboring cities. In comparison, Zero Wing can freely access the auction houses of every NPC city. After the system announcement was repeated 3 times, the miniature Ancient World's local players instantly went into an uproar, many going to the official forums to discuss Zero Wing. Particularly, the topic of how to join Zero Wing became the focus of many people's attention. For a time, Zero Wing became the most desired guild for players to join in the miniature Ancient World. Damn it. How did things turn out like this? Inside the top-floor VIP room of a high-class restaurant, Jing Yang's rage shot through the roof when he learned about the details regarding bronze guilds. Previously, he had chosen to withdraw Blackwater from the Azura Mercenary Alliance because he wanted Zero Wing to know Blackwater's significance to the Mercenary Alliance. However, Zero Wing had quickly proved him wrong time and again. First, Zero Wing had revealed astonishing foundations by forcing its way into the Boundary Mountain Range with only a team of 100 players. Moreover, out of these 100 players, there were 3 fourth-floor experts that even a hegemonic power like Bright Dragon had to be wary of. Now, Zero Wing had even gotten promoted into a bronze guild, instantly solidifying its position in the miniature Ancient World. In contrast, Blackwater had only managed to secure the management rights to a small NPC city after joining forces with other superpowers. Moreover, they weren't even certain if they could retain their hold over this NPC city. It hadn't been more than a day since the Myriad World's Descent expansion pack took effect. There would be more and more players from foreign gods' domains entering the miniature Ancient World from now on. So, competition in the miniature Ancient World would only grow even more intense in the future. How was he supposed to explain himself to his superiors? It should be known that it was entirely his decision to withdraw Blackwater from the Azura Mercenary Alliance. Now that Zero Wing had become a bronze guild, it instantly became the most sought-after partner for all local powers. After all, players needed the various services the various NPC cities offered. At this moment, the representatives of the other powers, which had also withdrawn from the Azura Mercenary Alliance, in the room were similarly filled with mixed feelings. As for Thousand Swords, he sighed deeply after reading about the details of bronze guilds and said, "It seems I'll have to pay Zero Wing a visit. Teacher, can our guild really not survive in the miniature Ancient World without Zero Wing?" Gu Iran asked with a confused expression. World Dominators was a veteran super guild. In Gu Iran's opinion, World Dominators should have no problem securing its hold over a small NPC city, so he felt it unnecessary to seek partnership with Zero Wing. "It's going to be very difficult," Thousand Swords said and shook his head after giving Gu Iran's question some thought. "This is only the Myriad World's Descent's first day. The players we have seen thus far are only the vanguard of the various foreign powers. Once those foreign powers start to dispatch more god-ranked experts, even the 5 great super guilds will have difficulty safeguarding their city, let alone other superpowers like us. Also, even if I visit Zero Wing, it's uncertain whether Zero Wing will agree to partner with us." Thousand Swords couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile when he spoke up to this point. Although he had long since known that the powers of other gods' domains would be very powerful, he didn't think they would be so powerful that they'd have experts capable of rivaling him among their younger generation. Moreover, this was only the first day of the new expansion pack. The various foreign powers were only testing the waters with their younger members. Hardly any of their veteran experts had made a move yet. Red Obsidian City, Flower of Seven Sins residents. We have finished reallocating our core members and resources, Commander Omen. We have already sold all of our lands and shops in the various NPC cities, and we can set out for Shadowfog City at any time, a level 110 masked ranger said respectfully to the bewitching woman resting in the office. Have everyone move out, then, Death Omen commanded. Then, while looking at the report on her desk, she said, a bronze guild, is it? Count yourselves lucky. Once the level 120 maps open, we'll see how you can continue retaining your place in the miniature ancient world. After saying so, Death Omen left her office and withdrew from Red Obsidian City with the rest of the Flower of Seven Sins members. Then, they moved toward Shadowfog City, a large NPC city controlled by Bright Dragon. While the Flower of Seven Sins was secretly moving its base of operations, Shafong had teleported to Zero Wing's residence in Abyssal Star City, not daring to stay even a moment longer in 100 Flow City's Adventurers Association. Aren't these rewards a little too much? Even after reading the system notification exclusive to him several times, Shafong still couldn't help but feel astonished. During his previous life, Zero Wing had conducted its promotion into a bronze guild in the Greater God's Domain, so it didn't receive any rewards for its promotion. Although he had fortunately acquired a bronze cross-border guild promotion order in this life, he didn't think becoming the first bronze guild would come with such abundant rewards. It was incredibly difficult for a guild to raise its God's Domain fame in the Greater God's Domain. Yet, God's Domain fame was crucial for guilds to get promoted beyond the bronze rank. For example, a large-scale crisis quest would only award a guild with 1,000 fame points. Yet, a bronze guild needed 500,000 God's Domain fame points to get promoted to the silver rank. Aside from needing fame to get promoted, a bronze guild that had accumulated 200,000 fame points could apply with the Adventurers Association to construct a world tower of its own. Although bronze guilds could only construct the first 2 floors of the world tower, it was still a privilege that many bronze guilds dreamed of obtaining. This was because players would need to pay 100 units of 7 Luminaries crystal each time they applied to challenge the Advanced Adventurer certification with the Adventurers Association. Indeed, the application fee was charged in 7 Luminaries crystals, not coins or magic crystals. However, if a guild managed to acquire its own world tower, it could lower the fee by 50%. This would drastically reduce the 7 Luminaries crystals it needed to spend to let its members take the Advanced Adventurer certification. Now that Zero Wing had received 100,000 God's Domain fame as soon as it had become a bronze guild, it would no doubt save Zero Wing a lot of time in the future. However, compared to the guild rewards, the personal rewards Shafong received were what truly surprised him. Not only did he receive 3 level-ups, which instantly propelled him to level 120, but he also received a legendary legacy scroll and an overtier spellbook. Both of these 2 items were of extraordinary value, and they normally could not be bought with money. An overtier spellbook was a spell capable of exhibiting strength above its tier. For example, a Tier 3 overtier spell could exhibit power at the standard of Tier 4 spells, while a Tier 4 overtier spell could exhibit power at the standard of Tier 5 spells. Typically, a Tier 3 overtier spellbook would be worth 1 piece of fragmented legendary equipment. As for Tier 4 overtier spellbooks, their value exceeded even fragmented legendary weapons. Moreover, the Tier 4 overtier spell that Shafong received was even a Berserk-type spell. Demon God's Armament, Tier 4 overtier spell requires, Tier 4 upon use, borrow the Demon God's power to create a set of weapons and equipment with 100% adaptability, increasing the effects of all your weapons and equipment by 100%. Duration, 60 seconds cooldown, 1 hour. The greater a player's equipment standard, the more strength they could draw from this Tier 4 overtier spell. In Shafong's opinion, the effects of Demon God's Armament were not the least bit inferior to a Tier 5 overtier spell. After carefully keeping the overtier spellbook away, Shafong turned his attention to the ancient dark purple scroll in his bag. If he were to say that Demon God's Armament had given him a pleasant surprise, this ancient dark purple scroll had given him a fright. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3174 If the miniature ancient world's various powers were to learn about this thing, Zero Wing will probably cease to exist before tomorrow comes, Shifeng thought to himself as he looked at the ancient dark purple scroll in his bag. If the miniature ancient world's various powers were to learn about this thing, Zero Wing will probably cease to exist before tomorrow comes, Shifeng thought to himself as he looked at the ancient dark purple scroll in his bag. He had returned to Zero Wing's residence from the Adventurers Association without hesitation because of this legendary legacy scroll. Individual rewards awarded by the system would briefly appear before the recipient when the system handed them out. Although other players could not inspect the information of the awarded items, they could still determine the quality of the items based on the mana and glow effect given off. Meanwhile, a purple-gold glow typically represented fragmented legendary items, while a dark purple glow represented legendary items. If the reward he received was only an ordinary legendary item, the various superpowers might grow envious, but it wasn't enough to make them go crazy. After all, every superpower had legendary items of its own, with some even having legendary weapons. Needless to say, powers from foreign gods' domains would also have legendary weapons. However, it was a different story for the legendary legacy scroll. Its value was above even that of legendary weapons. The best legacy scrolls Shifeng had seen during his previous life were epic legacy scrolls. An epic legacy scroll could not only teleport players directly to a Tier 4 legacy land, but players could also challenge the same legacy land up to 3 times. This made epic legacy scrolls highly sought after by Tier 3 players who had difficulty finding a Tier 4 legacy land. Meanwhile, above epic legacy scrolls were legendary legacy scrolls. However, the existence of the legendary legacy scroll was akin to a myth in even the greater god's domain, and its existence had only ever been mentioned in library records. There were no records of people actually finding a legendary legacy scroll in reality. As for the value of a legendary legacy scroll, it was something that even the Galaxy Corporation, a titan in the greater world, would try to obtain, even at the cost of destroying an entire world. This was because a legendary legacy scroll did not simply teleport the user to a random Tier 4 legacy land. Instead, it would teleport the user to a legacy land related to their legacy. It might not seem like there was a difference since the players would be teleported to a Tier 4 legacy land regardless of whether they had used an epic legacy scroll or a legendary legacy scroll. However, the difference between entering an ordinary legacy land and a legacy land related to one's legacy was like night and day. It was especially true if one had a unique legacy. If a player entered a legacy land related to their legacy, they could further improve their legacy. It was especially true for God legacy holders. If a God legacy holder got promoted to Tier 4 via a legacy land related to their legacy, they would become much closer to the god they inherited their legacy from. It should be known that gods were known as the strongest existences in God's domain. Even an apex race like dragons was beneath the god race. Dragons might be known to be invincible among opponents of the same tier, but gods were known to transcend tiers. This was why Tier 6 gods could kill Tier 6 god-ranked players easily. It would be the same if an ancient god legacy holder got promoted via a Tier 4 legacy land related to their legacy. They would become closer to the ancient god their legacy was tied to after they got promoted to Tier 4. Although ancient gods were also gods, they had existed for a much longer period of time. They wielded strength of much greater purity, and they were much stronger than gods under the same tier. In God's domain, any Tier 6 player who had managed to master a complete ancient god legacy would become a symbol of invincibility. They could control a world at will, and even the Galaxy Corporation would have to bow its head to such existences. Meanwhile, a legendary legacy scroll had the ability to create such an invincible existence. Even if the chance of success wasn't 100%, it was still enough to cause all powers in the greater god's domain to go crazy. After taking a long look at the legendary legacy scroll, Shifeng set it aside in his bag. He did not hurry to challenge his Tier 4 promotion. The Myriad Worlds Descent expansion pack had thoroughly changed the status quo in the miniature ancient world. Before Zero Wing's situation stabilized, Shifeng dared not challenge his Tier 4 promotion. The Tier 4 promotion took a long time to complete. The whole process could take anywhere from several days to half a month. Such a long time was enough for significant changes to take place in the ever-changing miniature ancient world. He wouldn't even be surprised if Zero Wing no longer existed by the time he completed his Tier 4 promotion. Hence, only after making all the necessary preparations could he challenge his Tier 4 promotion with peace of mind. However, despite Shifeng's thoughts, it was also true that Zero Wing urgently needed high-end combatants. So, he promptly contacted Laura Crader and handed her the Tier 4 Legacy Search Scroll he acquired from killing the Void Serpent. This situation surprised Laura. She didn't think that Shifeng would give her the Legacy Search Scroll instead of using it himself. It was especially so now that Shifeng had reached level 120 already. With Shifeng's strength, he could easily complete his Tier 4 promotion and allow Zero Wing to progress further in its development. In response to Laura's confusion, Shifeng simply said he had many matters he needed to tend to and wasn't in a hurry to get promoted to Tier 4. After hearing this, Laura no longer refused the Legacy Search Scroll. After all, the quicker she raised her tier, the sooner she could head to the Greater God's domain. Hence, after taking the Legacy Search Scroll, she promptly left for the Boundary Mountain Range in search of a Tier 4 Legacy land. Shortly after Laura left for the Boundary Mountain Range, Su Qianliu and Blackie excitedly ran into Shifeng's office and reported Zero Wing's latest situation to Shifeng. Many experts have applied to join Zero Wing after we became a Bronze Guild leader. In addition, the students of many academies have also sent us their resumes. We have already received over 200,000 applications in total for the time being. That's even more than what the Azura Mercenary Alliance has received at its peak. Some well-known A-League experts have also applied to join Zero Wing, Blackie said excitedly. Zero Wing had very high recruitment standards. Aside from youths under the age of 20, those above 20 needed to be at the half-step refinement realm standard at the very least. Yet, despite these harsh standards, Zero Wing still received many applications to join. Among these applicants, over 50 of them were A-League experts. It should be known that every A-League expert was a peak expert or above. If Zero Wing accepted all of these applicants, its overall strength would be close to matching the 5 great super guilds. I have received partnership requests from over 10 superpowers on my side, one of them being the Secret Pavilion. All of these superpowers are willing to let us help nurture their peak geniuses like Twilight Echo. Moreover, they are offering to pay 6 bottles of S-rank nutrient fluid per person, Su Qianliu said with a smile. According to the estimates these superpowers have provided, we should be receiving over 500 peak geniuses in total if we choose to partner with all of them. That's a minimum of 3,000 bottles of S-rank nutrient fluid. We can even afford to nurture a 1,000-man main force with that many S-rank nutrient fluids. Moreover, those peak geniuses will also become Zero Wing's combat power. Just the thought of having so many peak geniuses fighting for Zero Wing sent shivers down Su Qianliu's spine. With such a powerful force, Zero Wing could even clash against the hegemonic powers of other gods' domains. 6 bottles per person is too little. We're already having trouble training our own geniuses, Shifeng said, shaking his head. Tell those superpowers that they'll have to fork out 10 bottles per person. Moreover, we will only be accepting 300 people in total. Shifeng was well aware of what those superpowers were trying to do. They were simply looking to form close ties with Zero Wing. However, his supply of hypersensitivity potions was limited. After deducting the portion he needed to nurture Zero Wing's experts, he didn't have many left to nurture the experts of other powers. However, it wasn't good to outright refuse those superpowers partnership offers, either. As the saying went, never slap a smiling person. Rather than openly refuse these superpowers and risk offending them, it would be better to ask for a higher price and scare them away. I understand. I'll inform them afterward, Su Qianliu said, agreeing with Shifeng's sentiments. Have you prepared the materials and magicians I had you prepare? Shifeng asked. The status of a bronze guild might have allowed Zero Wing to stabilize its foothold in the miniature ancient world, but it wasn't enough to allow Zero Wing to thrive. For that to happen, Zero Wing would still have to earn a large amount of wealth in God's domain. Meanwhile, now that the myriad worlds were descending to the miniature ancient world, it was the perfect opportunity to make a fortune. The materials are ready, But we are still missing a few master magicians, Su Qianliu said, feeling a little ashamed. Although many experts had come to join Zero Wing, master magicians were still incredibly rare. Most master magicians remained in the hands of the various superpowers, and there were very few independent master magicians. That's enough. Have all of them gather. I have something I need them to do right away, Shifeng said. Shifeng was well aware that the struggle for the various NPC cities had only just begun. If Zero Wing wished to thoroughly stabilize its foothold in the miniature ancient world, it would need its own city. Moreover, it'd have to be a guild city that could connect with the NPC cities. This was also the basis of survival for the various guilds in the Greater Gods domain. Afterward, Su Qianliu had all of the master magicians she found gather in Zero Wing's residence. Then, Shifeng took out the medium teleportation magic array design he acquired from the Nether King and had the various master magicians begin constructing the magic arrays stated in the design. The design could only be used to construct 3 medium teleportation arrays that could teleport up to 50 people at a time. Each medium teleportation array cost 100,000 magic crystals to construct. The construction of a medium teleportation array was much more tedious than a small teleportation array, the complexity comparable to the construction of an NPC city's teleportation hall. Moreover, the core magic array was even a Grandmaster magic array that could only be constructed by a Grandmaster magician. Fortunately, Shifeng was a Grandmaster magician, so constructing the core magic array wouldn't be a problem. While Shifeng was leading the many master magicians to construct a medium teleportation array for Abyssal Star City, competition in the miniature ancient world was growing fiercer and fiercer. It wasn't until the 4th day after the expansion pack's launch that the various powers' management rights over the various NPC cities were decided. The struggle between the various powers these past few days was incredibly exciting, and many experts and powers had either risen to fame or fallen into obscurity. The struggle was so heated that everyone quickly forgot about Zero Wing's promotion into a bronze guild. At the same time, the Seven Luminaries Alliance, one of the Greater Gods domain's strongest powers, had released a ranking list in the miniature ancient world. The God-ranked expert ranking list. The ranking list included the top 100 God-ranked experts that have appeared in all Colosseums across the miniature ancient world, and it became an important reference for the greater world's various conglomerates. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3175 Abyssal Star Primordial City. Abyssal Star Primordial City. As the sky gradually darkened, more and more players began gathering in the restaurants and street stalls that lined the eastern side of the city's main street. It's getting increasingly difficult to get into Abyssal Star City. I had to wait in line for 2 whole hours today, a level 112 shield warrior clad in pitch-black armor complained as he sat down at a street stall. The entrance fee has also been increased to 20 silver today. That's 10% of my earnings today gone. Upon hearing the shield warrior's complaints, the level 110 elementalist sitting next to the shield warrior clicked her tongue and said, "You're a bronze member in Azura, so you have to wait for only 2 hours to get into the city. Do you know how long I had to wait in line as a normal member?" "I was just saying," the shield warrior said, scratching his head as he revealed a silly smile. Ever since the Myriad Worlds Descent expansion pack took place, Abyssal Star City had become one of the few cities local players could rest in. This drastically increased the number of players seeking to enter the Primordial City. However, as the city only had a maximum capacity of 6 million players, even after the Azura Mercenary Alliance had raised its membership requirements, the Mercenary Alliance's member count had still exceeded 10 million. This was far above Abyssal Star City's maximum capacity. If he hadn't joined Azura earlier on and gotten himself a bronze membership, he would be stuck as a normal member and have had to wait in line for 7 to 8 hours just to enter Abyssal Star City. At this time, a level 112 ranger wearing chainmail walked over and sat down next to the shield warrior and elementalist, saying, "Our adventurer team is already one of the more fortunate ones. We were lucky we chose to set our base of operations in Abyssal Star City. Had we set up base in an NPC city, we wouldn't even be able to get into the city. Right now, over 99% of NPC cities have already become the territories of the various foreign gods' domains. We'd have to wait ages to enter an NPC city even if we are willing to pay the exorbitant fee of 30 silver. Many adventurer teams that entered the miniature ancient world at the same time as we did have to hire people to repair their weapons and equipment outside NPC cities at an exorbitant price. Even then, they still have to wait in line to get their weapons and equipment repaired. That's right. If our Broken Dream adventurer team hadn't joined the Azura Mercenary Alliance long ago, we would be lining up outside NPC cities like most other adventurer teams, the Elementalist said, nodding. It would be great if I could find a boyfriend who's a core member of Zero Wing. In that case, I could teleport straight into his private house instead of waiting in line. Keep on dreaming, the Shield Warrior said, rolling his eyes at the Elementalist. Every male core member of Zero Wing is prime real estate for the various academies' young ladies right now. You don't stand a chance against those young ladies. Currently, all core members of Zero Wing enjoyed a special privilege that allowed them to purchase a private house in Abyssal Star City so long as they had enough guild contribution points and coins to afford it. Meanwhile, on top of being able to accommodate up to 4 players, every private house also allowed its occupants to teleport directly into the city, skipping the need to wait in line. Because of this, many players were desperately seeking to purchase a private house's teleportation slot, with some people offering up to 5 million credits per slot per month. However, even at this price, it wasn't guaranteed that one could buy a teleportation slot. Can't you let me dream? The Elementalist glared at the Shield Warrior. Noticing the awkward atmosphere, the Ranger hurriedly changed the topic, saying, "Have you guys seen the God-ranked expert ranking list? The list is truly astonishing. Only 2 people from the 5 great super guilds have managed to enter the list, and both of them are old monsters rumored to have reached the Beyond Domain realm already. Even then, they have only managed to rank 89th and 93rd. I've seen the list. I heard that those 2 old monsters only got into the list because the 5 great super guilds managed to secure over half of Burning City's management slots and gained thorough control over the city. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't even get into the top 100, the Shield Warrior said. The various gods' domains' expert standards are vastly greater than ours. Even Beyond Domain Realms experts can just barely squeeze into the top 100. There simply is no place for people like us. Subsequently, the level 112 Ranger said, but an amazing expert has appeared in our Azura Mercenary Alliance this time. That expert actually got ranked 27th. This has greatly increased our reputation among the various gods' domains. That's right. I was very surprised when I learned about it. I originally thought Zero Wing's guild leader Black Flame would be the one to enter the ranking list. I didn't think it would be the Glimmer Adventurer team's Vice Commander Cassio instead, the Elementalist said, sparkles appearing in her eyes when she mentioned Cassio. His skills are simply amazing. He defeated a ranger bearing the title of Blood Eagle in just 35 moves. It's a pity Cassio went silent after securing a slot in 100 Flow City. Otherwise, he can definitely rank higher in the list. Cassio's appearance is indeed expected, but what's even more surprising is 1000 Scars, a little monster from the Flower of 7 Sins. She managed to rank 10th among the 20 outstanding youths at the young age of 19, the Shield Warrior said. In terms of combat standards, she is already close to entering the top 100 of the God-ranked expert list. The second place among the 20 outstanding youths is ranked 98th in the God-ranked expert list. From what I can tell, there isn't much difference between that guy and 1000 Scars, so she should probably be close to entering the God-ranked expert list's top 100. Indeed. 1000 Scars is already recognized as the #1 genius in our god's domain. A conglomerate from the greater world has even extended an invitation to her. This has instantly elevated the Flower of 7 Sins position beyond the 5 great super guilds. The various foreign gods' domains powers have even taken the initiative to let the Flower of 7 Sins have Grey Copper City. Now, the Flower of 7 Sins is the only power in our god's domain to hold control over 2 NPC cities. Moreover, it is also the only power that can enter the Boundary Mountain Range 2nd underground level to search for Tier 4 legacy lands. Now, even the 5 great super guilds are looking to further their partnership with the Flower of 7 Sins, the Elementalist said. Then, she worriedly continued, if the 5 great super guilds really do deepen their ties with the Flower of Seven Sins, it's going to be tough for our Azura Mercenary Alliance in the future. The Shield Warrior and Ranger nodded in agreement. The Azura Mercenary Alliance might have Abyssal Star City to rely on, but it didn't have absolute management rights over any NPC city. It only had 2 management slots in 100 Flow City, which allowed it to receive a portion of the city's income. Absolute control over the city lay in the hands of the Divine Hunters Guild, which held 6 management slots in 100 Flow City. Although Abyssal Star City sat in a strategic location, its importance would fall when players gained access to level 120+ maps and the NPC cities there. Even if players needed to find a place to rest, they would choose to rest in the NPC cities situated in maps below level 120 so that they could use the teleportation halls there to teleport to the level 120+ NPC cities. At that time, Abyssal Star City would be put into an awkward situation, and the Azura Mercenary Alliance would lose its ability to compete with the Flower of Seven Sins. While the Broken Dream Adventurer Team's members were chatting among themselves, 3 level 115+ players sitting on the open-air roof of a nearby restaurant were quietly eavesdropping on their conversation. I didn't think our core members would be so popular. Shifeng chuckled when he overheard the conversation of Broken Dream's members. It's not bad. You should have seen Blackie's situation, guild leader. He doesn't even dare to step out of the God's Domain Association's entrance recently. I can probably form a line that stretches from North Street to South Street with all the people who've asked me for Blackie's contact information, Su Qianliu said, chuckling. Can you not just make fun of me, Qianliu? You speak as if nobody has asked for the guild leader's contact information, Blackie said, curling his lips. I heard that if you hadn't announced that you've sealed the information, a crowd would have stormed the God's Domain Association building. Shifeng was a little stunned when he heard this. Let's set this matter aside for now, Su Qianliu said, faking a cough. I came here with important business. 100 Flow City's teleportation array is completed already. Now, all that's left is to activate the main teleportation array in Abyssal Star City, and teleportation between the 2 cities will become possible. It's done already. Blackie's eyes glowed with excitement when he heard Su Qianliu's words. The various local powers have had plenty of interactions with the foreign gods' domain's powers thus far. Some superpowers had even traded with these foreign powers and acquired many combat techniques that allowed players to adapt to the greater gods' domain's environment much more easily. This, in turn, allowed the members of these superpowers to develop their combat standards rapidly. Unfortunately, Zero Wing didn't have anything special that attracted the attention of the foreign gods' domains. As a result, the development speed of Zero Wing's members had become vastly inferior to the various superpowers members. However, things would change once teleportation between Abyssal Star City and 100 Flow City became possible. Previously, players from foreign gods' domains couldn't be bothered to visit Abyssal Star City since they needed to travel all the way to the city on foot and weren't even guaranteed to be allowed into the city. After all, the Azura Mercenary Alliance's members had priority entry into Abyssal Star City. Now, though, foreign players could treat Abyssal Star City as a teleportation hub. Although they would still be forcibly removed from the city if the city's occupancy was maxed, they could still save up on plenty of travel time. Good. Contact Soul and have her activate the teleportation array right away, Shifeng said, smiling. He had been eagerly awaiting this moment for a long time already. After all, he didn't have any items suitable to be used for trading with the foreign gods' domain's powers. Shortly after Shifeng issued his command, a pillar of light rose from a cordoned area in Abyssal Star City's eastern district. At the same time, a small, 2-story teleportation hall also rose from the cordoned space. System: Abyssal Star Primordial City has fulfilled the upgrade conditions. Do you wish to upgrade the city now? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3176 _ The upgrade conditions have been fulfilled, just like that. The upgrade conditions have been fulfilled, just like that. Shifeng was momentarily stunned. The conditions to upgrade a primordial city were vastly greater than that of ordinary guild cities. Not only did a primordial city have to meet a vastly greater population requirement, but it also needed to fulfill a much greater building requirement. Originally, Shifeng thought that Abyssal Star City would need a few more advanced constructions built before it could get promoted from an advanced town to a basic city. He didn't think that the primordial city would meet its building requirement after having only a medium teleportation array constructed. 1. Did something happen, guild leader? Su Qianliu asked curiously when she saw Shifeng suddenly falling into a daze. It's nothing. We simply struck gold, Shifeng said, chuckling. It was a qualitative transformation for a primordial city to become a basic city. The changes that would take place would be even greater than an ordinary intermediate guild city becoming an advanced guild city. Struck gold? Su Qianliu tilted her head, her confusion growing even deeper. The teleportation array connecting Abyssal Star City with 100 Flow City would indeed generate a significant amount of wealth for Zero Wing. The cost of teleporting players between Abyssal Star City and 100 Flow City was 30 silver per person. If the city charged each player 1 gold, that would be a profit of 70 silver. However, the medium teleportation array could only teleport up to 50 people at a time, and each teleportation took around 1 minute. Taking into account that there were 48 hours a day in God's domain, Abyssal Star City could, at most, earn around 100,000 gold of profit through the teleportation array each day. That might be a significant sum of money, but it was nothing compared to the money earned from Abyssal Star City's entrance fees. Currently, Abyssal Star City was making 1.2 million gold per day through entrance fees alone. Even after deducting the maintenance cost of the city's constructions and NPCs, the city would still be left with 600,000 gold, which was still multiple times more than what the city could make through the teleportation array. Hence, Su Qianliu couldn't understand how Zero Wing had struck gold. In fact, let alone striking gold, the teleportation array couldn't even allow Abyssal Star City to match the income players could make from managing a small NPC city. Even a small NPC city had upwards of 10 million in population. Moreover, aside from entrance fees, players that held management rights over an NPC city would also receive a portion of the profits generated by the city's auction house. Overall, Abyssal Star City's total net income couldn't even match 1/3 of what players could earn from managing a small NPC city, let alone medium and large NPC cities. Moreover, considering that Zero Wing's member count was now over 500,000, an additional income of 100,000 gold was nowhere near enough for Zero Wing to consider it striking gold. At the end of the day, the addition of the teleportation array only allowed Zero Wing to have stronger bargaining power against the foreign god's domain's powers. How much are advanced lineage crystals selling for in auction houses now, Blackie? Shifeng asked as he turned to Blackie. Advanced lineage crystals? After pondering for a moment, Blackie answered, they're going for 200,000 gold each on average. Many superpowers are buying the advanced lineage crystals that the foreign powers have brought in, so prices aren't going any lower for the time being. That's very cheap already, Shifeng said, a smile appearing on his face. Previously, he had sold ordinary lineage crystals for several 100,000 contribution points through the Azura Mercenary Alliance. Meanwhile, each contribution point was worth 40 silver. Yet, now, advanced lineage crystals, which were much better and rarer than ordinary lineage crystals, were being sold at only 200,000 gold. This was definitely a very low price. Do you plan on buying some, guild leader? Su Qianliu asked worriedly. Advanced lineage crystals might be excellent items, but Zero Wing's expansion had drastically increased its expenditure. The change in the miniature ancient world's environment had only worsened things. Nowadays, it had become normal for players to die at least once when grinding out in the fields. If players were unlucky, their entire team might get wiped out. In that case, resurrection would become impossible, and they'd lose an entire level plus a piece of equipment. Because of this, Zero Wing needed to spend large amounts of gold coins each day purchasing weapons and equipment from the auction house to restock its guild warehouse. Although the guild could also obtain weapons and equipment through dungeons and grinding out in the fields, the amount obtained was nowhere near enough to meet demands. So, Zero Wing was in no situation to be purchasing advanced lineage crystals that cost 200,000 gold each. Even purchasing only one advanced lineage crystal a day would immediately put Zero Wing into the red. At that time, Zero Wing's many members would have to stop grinding for levels and focus entirely on raiding team dungeons just to prevent the guild from running out of weapons and equipment. Of course. Moreover, we're going to buy in bulk, Shifeng said, chuckling. Then, he shared the system notification he had just received with Su Qianliu. Due to the influx of advanced lineage crystals in the miniature ancient world, it had become normal to see 100-man teams led by higher lifeform players in the Boundary Mountain range. It wouldn't even be strange to see an entire team made up of players with Tier 4 mana. However, it was a different story for an entire team made up of higher lifeform players with Tier 4 mana. The cost of establishing such a team was too much for any individual power to afford. Even if a power had the money to do so, it wouldn't be wise to invest so much money into a single team. Having said that, in the event that such a team came into being, it'd be unstoppable in the current miniature ancient world. Originally, Su Qianliu was still very opposed to Shifeng's decision to purchase advanced lineage crystals in bulk. However, she was immediately stunned after seeing the system notification Shifeng had shared with her. Then, she asked, "Guild leader, is this real? If Abyssal Star City could get promoted into a basic city, they'd indeed be striking gold. It should be known that a settlement's size would increase several times when upgrading from the advanced town status to the basic city status. Not to mention, Abyssal Star City was a special settlement that was vastly superior to the average settlement. Even at the advanced town status, Abyssal Star City was much larger than the average advanced town and was only slightly smaller than a basic city. Hence, it was safe to assume that Abyssal Star City would be significantly bigger than the average basic city once it got upgraded to the basic city status. If they factored in the teleportation array they just built, Abyssal Star City's income could probably rival medium NPC cities. "You'll find out in a moment," Shifeng said, not bothering to explain himself. Instead, he promptly chose to upgrade Abyssal Star City. Immediately, all players within Abyssal Star City received a system announcement. Regional system announcement: Abyssal Star City will be upgraded into a basic city. The upgrade will take 6 hours. All players within Abyssal Star City will be teleported out of the city in 10 minutes. Please prepare to get teleported. The system announcement appeared 3 times. Before the players within the city could react to the teleportation hall that had suddenly appeared in Abyssal Star City, they were abruptly struck with the mind-blowing news of Abyssal Star City becoming a basic city. What's going on? First, a teleportation hall suddenly appeared in Abyssal Star City. Now, Abyssal Star City is getting upgraded into a basic city. Abyssal Star City has become a basic city on top of getting a teleportation hall. Is Abyssal Star City on its way to becoming the #1 city in the miniature ancient world? Everyone in the city promptly started a discussion about the abrupt changes that had taken place. The Azura Mercenary Alliance's members, in particular, grew ecstatic after learning about these 2 pieces of good news. Normally, be it Abyssal Star City gaining a teleport function or Abyssal Star City becoming a basic city, neither development could spark an uproar if they had appeared on their own. However, it was an entirely different story when both developments appeared together. After all, this essentially meant that Abyssal Star City had just become the closest NPC city to the Boundary Mountain range. Not only could players purchase the daily necessities sold in NPC cities from Abyssal Star City, but they could also access the auction house from Abyssal Star City. In fact, Abyssal Star City's auction house would be even better than the auction houses of NPC cities. This was because a guild city's auction house had the option of setting the handling fee it charged to be much lower than the handling fee charged in the various NPC cities' auction houses. Combined with the convenience of teleportation, it wasn't hard to imagine that Abyssal Star City would become the miniature ancient world's trade center in the future. Meanwhile, as members of the Azura Mercenary Alliance, they had priority to enter Abyssal Star City. So, they would no longer have to worry about not being able to purchase their daily necessities. They also wouldn't have to worry about not being able to sell their harvests for a good price. Subsequently, after everyone was forcibly teleported out of Abyssal Star City, news of Abyssal Star City's promotion and acquisition of a teleportation hall quickly spread across the entire miniature ancient world. TL notes. 1. So, apparently, Abyssal Star City was an advanced town all this time. I have an excuse as to why I made such a mistranslation. Primordial City, Ji Cheng, City, Chengshe, Town, Xiaozhan. Up until this chapter, the author hasn't ever clearly stated whether his was referring to a primordial city or a primordial town. When people use the term, they are usually talking about an ancient city, or a primordial city in this case. It is also the case for when someone mentions X, it's assumed that they are talking about X city, not X town. In the case of towns, people will usually use Z or Z when referring to Z town. To prove my point, here are 2 examples of how the author names his towns and cities. 1. Silverwing Town, Chapter 1728 of Main Story. 2. 100 Flow City. However, I will not be changing Abyssal Star City to Abyssal Star Town. Since the author has insisted on using Abyssal Star City since Chapter 95, I am going with the assumption that Abyssal Star City is a settlement named Abyssal Star City but had the status of advanced town. This is quite a confusing development, so if you have any questions, feel free to join my Discord and ping me your questions. Discord, https://discord. GGJDMQSAX 9 PM. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3177_Miniature Ancient World, Tide City, Tower Alliance's Residence. Miniature Ancient World, Tide City, Tower Alliance's Residence. The Tower Alliance's residence occupied an area of 2 sports stadiums. In the large city that housed over 100 million players, the residence was a unique existence. As for the guild members and independent players that walked in and out of the residence, many of them had reached the standard of peak experts. Even after the Myriad Worlds Descent expansion pack took effect and powers from the many gods' domains entered the miniature ancient world, many independent experts were still seeking to join the Tower Alliance. The Abyssal Star Primordial City that's under Zero Wing's control has been upgraded into a basic city already, Great Elder Favre. Combined with its ability to facilitate teleportation to NPC cities, it will definitely become a densely populated large city in the future, the Demidragon woman Maria said excitedly as she looked at Favre, the young-looking lady sitting at the center of the conference table while quietly reading the document in her hands. I suggest we establish a trade center in Abyssal Star City as soon as possible. That way, the Tower Alliance will have an even greater advantage in the miniature ancient world. Although we still can't access level 120+ maps, I agree that we should deepen our partnership with Zero Wing, Vice Guild Leader Flanders said in agreement. Abyssal Star City was a guild city that bordered the Boundary Mountain Range. On top of that, it even had a teleportation hall that allowed players to teleport to 100 Flow City, an NPC city. It wasn't hard to imagine that Abyssal Star City would become a transit hub or base of operations for the many gods' domains players in the future. At that time, the city's popularity would exceed every one of the current NPC cities. As icing on the cake, Zero Wing was also a guild with extraordinary potential. Hence, nothing could go wrong with furthering the Tower Alliance's partnership with Zero Wing. We can indeed carry out further cooperation with Zero Wing, but establishing a trade center in Abyssal Star City will require more consideration. You too should know that the establishment of a trade center is of utmost importance. Zero Wing's Abyssal Star City might be considered the #1 guild city in the current miniature ancient world, but that might not necessarily be the case once level 120+ maps open up, and the Myriad Worlds powers begin developing their own settlements, Favre, the young-looking lady, said, shaking her head. Our desolate Star Corporation only has a limited number of trade center slots. Wasting even one slot will incur us severe losses. Trade centers. This might be a term foreign to players from isolated gods' domains, but it was one of the main methods for the various gods' domain powers to generate income in the greater world. A trade center was a special shop that allowed players to conduct transactions using real-world currency directly. Unlike offline transactions made to trade in-game resources for real-world currencies, Transactions made through the trade center were absolutely confidential. Players wouldn't have to worry about exposing their identities when trading through a trade center. Hence, so long as the option was available, players in God's domain would always choose to trade through a trade center, even if they had to pay a slightly higher processing fee. Because of this, almost every prosperous guild city would have a trade center. Moreover, so long as a guild city could maintain a stable player population of 100 million, the annual income the city could generate through the trade center alone could rival 15% of a greater God's domain's hegemonic power's annual income. Of course, increasing a guild city's player population to 100 million was easier said than done. Even hegemonic powers in the greater God's domain would only have a few of such guild cities under their control. After all players sought to grow stronger, and to do so required them to transition to better maps at some point. Unless a guild city was established in a strategically important location, it'd be very difficult for it to thrive for very long. This was also one of the main reasons the many God's domain's various powers had come to the miniature ancient world to develop. The miniature ancient world was one of the few unexplored lands in the greater God's domain. After factoring in the miniature ancient world's massive player population, developing a guild city with over 100 million player population wouldn't be difficult. In fact, developing one or two mega-guild cities with a player population of over 500 million wasn't even out of the question. Meanwhile, aside from Abyssal Star City, the Desolate Star Corporation had many other options to establish its trade center. After all, while the Desolate Star Corporation might only be a subpar conglomerate in the greater world, it was still the majority shareholder of over a dozen hegemonic powers. The Tower Alliance wasn't the only hegemonic power the conglomerate owned shares in. What if I exercise my right as the sixth successor? Maria asked, reluctant to give up even after hearing Favre objecting to her suggestion. Have you lost your mind, Maria? Favre yelled as she looked at her niece in astonishment. Every successor only has one trade center slot. It is also your only capital to develop in the greater world. You'll lose your qualifications as a successor if you mismanage this slot. Life in the greater world was incredibly harsh. Hence, competition between the successors of a conglomerate was extraordinarily intense. Depending on how a successor handled the competition, they could end up living even worse than the average civilian for the rest of their lives. Favre had high hopes for Maria. Not only did this niece of hers have great talent, but the girl had also managed to become a vice commander in one of the Tower Alliance's frontline teams at such a young age. At this rate, it probably wouldn't take more than a year for her to rise to the position of commander of a frontline team. Then, maybe in another 2 or 3 years, she might be able to join the Tower Alliance's main force and become a vice commander there. At that time, Maria would have considerable authority in the Tower Alliance, and she'd be able to cultivate a group of trusted aides to help her in competing for the position of family head in the Desolate Star Corporation. Meanwhile, Maria's trade center slot would be her only source of income in the future. It would also become the capital for her to develop her cronies. After all, developing talents required a large amount of resources. Hence, investing this precious slot in a small and developing guild like Zero Wing was insane. I know, which is why I want to invest it in Abyssal Star City, Maria said resolutely. Unlike her aunt, Maria did not think her decision to invest her only trade center slot in Abyssal Star City was rash or crazy. This was because she knew about Zero Wing's foundations. With the support of the stratified Abyssal Realms players, there'd be no worry that Abyssal Star City couldn't prosper. Fine. I'll go and take a look at Abyssal Star City with you, Favre said, sighing. If I see that the city does have a good future ahead of it, I won't stop you. Thank you, Auntie, Maria said with a fawning smile. While the meeting at the Tower Alliance was taking place, the myriad God's domain's various powers also began sending people to 100 Flow City in wait for Abyssal Star City's opening. This was so they could investigate Abyssal Star City and determine whether it was worth investing in. Subsequently, time passed by quickly. After 6 hours passed, the barrier enveloping Abyssal Star City vanished, revealing a magnificent city that occupied an area several times larger than before. The sight of this city filled the players waiting nearby with awe and shock. Inside Abyssal Star City. So, this is the new Abyssal Star City? Su Qianliu and the others couldn't help but be astonished by the sight they saw after entering the upgraded Abyssal Star City. Although they hadn't started exploring the city yet, they could already tell that the city was extraordinary. If speaking purely in terms of size, Abyssal Star City was already comparable to a small NPC city. Now, the revenue Abyssal Star City could generate through entrance fees alone would most likely surpass the total income a power could earn through occupying a small NPC city. Aside from size, the density of Abyssal Star City's mana had also increased by a significant margin, so much so that the city's mana environment could already rival the stratified Abyssal Realm's mana environment. This also meant that Abyssal Star City's mana environment far surpassed that of the miniature ancient world's various NPC cities. However, what surprised Su Qianliu and the others the most would still have to be the city's improved purification effect. Originally, Abyssal Star City's ability to purify the corrosive mysterious energies was already very amazing. However, after the upgrade, the city's purification effect had transcended to an entirely different level. Even if a player's body was fully saturated with mysterious energies, it would only take them 2 or 3 hours of rest in the current Abyssal Star City to clear out everything. The purification rate had more than doubled compared to before. This would give players more time to spend out in the fields. While Su Qianliu and the others were awed by Abyssal Star City's changes, Shifeng had set his sights on the heart of the city, the Primordial Tower. The second floor is finally open. A flash of excitement appeared in Shifeng's eyes when he saw the system notification before him. System: Abyssal Star City has been upgraded into a basic city successfully. The Primordial Tower's second floor is now open. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3178 As expected of a primordial settlement. To think it would undergo such a drastic change just by becoming a basic city. When Hidden Soul sensed the change in Abyssal Star City's mana environment, flames of excitement ignited in her eyes. With the current Abyssal Star City, it's only a matter of time before we can catch up to the foreign superpowers. As expected of a primordial settlement. To think it would undergo such a drastic change just by becoming a basic city. When Hidden Soul sensed the change in Abyssal Star City's mana environment, flames of excitement ignited in her eyes. With the current Abyssal Star City, it's only a matter of time before we can catch up to the foreign superpowers. At present, local players of the miniature ancient world were vastly inferior to the foreign gods' domains players in terms of combat standards. It was especially true when they compared the core members of both sides' superpowers. In the case of foreign superpowers, even the weakest of their core members were Void Realm experts rivaling local domain realm experts in strength. In comparison, local superpowers would be fortunate if their core members could even reach the Void Realm standard, let alone the domain realm standard. Simply put, local superpowers had too few experts they could put to use. Even the 5 great super guilds were no exception. However, Abyssal Star City's mana environment, which rivaled the stratified Abyssal Realm's mana environment, combined with the various combat legacies brought in from the greater god's domain, it would be easy for the Azura Mercenary Alliance and its associates to nurture a batch of capable core members within 2 or 3 months. Catch up to those superpowers? Shifeng shook his head and chuckled when he heard Hidden Soul's words. Isn't your goal a little too small? The Abyssal Star Primordial City was one of the 9 primordial legacy cities of the second sequence. Moreover, going by the Primordial Tower's effects, Abyssal Star City was most definitely ranked near the front of the 9 primordial legacy cities. With Abyssal Star City, it'd be child's play for the Azura Mercenary Alliance and its associates to surpass the various superpowers from the greater god's domain. Small. Liu Wusheng, Galaxy Past, and Crimson Heart, who stood nearby, couldn't help but be stunned by Shifeng's response. They might not have understood how powerful the greater god's domain's superpowers were in the past. However, after these superpowers displayed a portion of their strength in the miniature ancient world, they realized just how massive of a gap existed between their local superpowers and the greater god's domain's superpowers. Setting aside core members, just the number of god-ranked experts they had was different by orders of magnitude. Even the weakest among the foreign superpowers had dispatched over a dozen god-ranked experts into the miniature ancient world, while the stronger ones had mobilized 2 or 3 dozen. In comparison, the Azura Mercenary Alliance in its entirety only had 9 god-ranked experts under its service. I doubt you'll believe anything I say now, so it's best if you check it out for yourselves, Shifeng said as he glanced at Liu Wuxing and the others. Then, he led everyone to the primordial tower located at the center of the city. The 9 primordial legacy cities would undergo a qualitative transformation whenever they underwent an upgrade. It was especially true for the city's core structures. In Abyssal Star City's case, this core structure would be the primordial tower. Primordial tower. As soon as everyone entered the primordial tower, they promptly noticed that the environment inside the tower had also undergone an earth-shattering change. How is this possible? Liu Wuxing and the others were dumbfounded when they saw the mana environment inside the tower. The mana inside the primordial tower had always been much denser than the mana outside. Even before Abyssal Star City was upgraded into a basic city, the primordial tower's mana had already reached a near mist-like state. At the time, the primordial tower's mana environment was already comparable to the Holy Lands for mana found on the main continent. Now, though, the primordial tower's mana had thoroughly taken on a mist-like state already. This was an exceedingly rare mana environment, even on the main continent. Meanwhile, any location with such a mana environment would be one that even god-ranked experts would seek to live in. However, the shock Liu Wuxing and the others experienced reached a whole new level when they arrived on the tower's newly opened second floor. This was because the mana environment inside the 100 miniature worlds on the second floor had already taken on a liquid state. While standing in these miniature worlds, even experts like Hidden Soul had experienced a feeling of omnipotence. Learning skills, spells, combat techniques, and mana techniques had become as simple as child's play in these miniature worlds. Even the learning difficulty of silver combat techniques had decreased drastically, and it only took them a few tries before they could execute these combat techniques at a rudimentary level. The effect of these miniature worlds was something even Shifeng did not expect. Silver combat techniques. Any player who had managed to learn a silver combat technique, even if their mastery over it was only at a rudimentary level, would become invincible among players of the same tier. If players thoroughly master a silver combat technique, they could even transcend tiers. In reality, the various superpowers of God's domain were in possession of many silver combat techniques. However, the number of experts who had managed to actually learn how to use a silver combat technique numbered incredibly few. This was also the case even in the greater God's domain. Simply put, the various superpowers and hegemonic powers did not lack silver combat techniques. What they lacked were people capable of learning silver combat techniques. However, the primordial tower's second-floor mana environment could reduce the difficulty of learning silver mana techniques by tenfold or more. With such a drastically lowered learning difficulty, even second-floor experts could fully master silver combat techniques, let alone third-floor god-ranked expert. Of course, the effects of the second floor's miniature worlds did not come for free. The first floor miniature worlds only cost 100 magic crystals per hour to maintain, yet the cost of operating the second floor miniature worlds was 100 mana stones per hour. Even if one could convert magic crystals to mana stones in the ideal 100-to-1 ratio, the cost of operating the second floor miniature worlds would still be 100 times greater than that of the first floor miniature worlds. In addition, the cost of maintaining the primordial tower itself had also increased drastically. Originally, the tower's maintenance only cost 1,000 magic crystals per day. Now, simply keeping the primordial tower active cost 1,000 mana stones per day. It seems I'm going to have to start stocking up on silver combat techniques from now on. Shifeng didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw the situation on the primordial tower's second floor. The consumption of mana stones was still acceptable since he could refine magic crystals into mana stones with the 7 Luminaries Codex. Although the Azura Mercenary Alliance would probably have to expend all of its magic crystals to let many members learn silver combat techniques, it was a worthwhile price to pay. Worst case scenario, the Mercenary Alliance would simply have to earn more magic crystals. However, acquiring silver combat techniques was going to be a challenge. Silver combat techniques were incredibly valuable, each one as valuable as a fragmented legendary item. Moreover, the legacy items holding silver combat techniques would usually break after a few uses. The effects of the second floor's miniature worlds are simply too frightening. Guild leader Black Flame. I suggest we only allow contracted members of the Azura Mercenary Alliance to use them, Liu Wusheng hurriedly said to Shifeng after snapping out of his daze. We should also raise the price and usage requirements of the first floor's miniature worlds. Crimson Heart, Galaxy Past, and Zhua Yalin also nodded in agreement. The upgraded Primordial Tower was simply terrifying. Just the changes to the first floor miniature worlds would already be enough to attract the attention of countless powers, let alone the second floor miniature worlds. After all, the first floor miniature world's mist-like mana could allow refinement realm experts to quickly master bronze combat techniques and possibly even advanced bronze combat techniques. It should be known that even peak experts had trouble mastering advanced bronze combat techniques. Meanwhile, peak experts who had mastered advanced bronze combat techniques could threaten even domain realm experts. If a peak expert managed to master multiple advanced bronze combat techniques of various types, even defeating domain realm experts wouldn't be out of the question. Domain realm experts. Even in the greater world, domain realm experts were not cabbages that could be found everywhere. They were existences inferior only to god-ranked experts. I do have such plans, Shifeng said, nodding. Aside from the Primordial Tower, I also plan to tweak the city's entrance fee. The standard entrance fee will be increased to 50 silver per person, and teleportation fees must be paid in magic crystals. 50 silver? Blackie's mouth widened when he heard Shifeng's words. Because of the Myriad World's descent, competition in the miniature ancient world had become much more intense than before. As a result, even refinement realm experts could only earn around 3 or 4 gold a day. If they were unlucky and failed to find any good equipment or rare materials, their daily earnings might even fall to just 1 gold. As for players beneath the refinement realm standard, they'd be fortunate if they could earn enough to break even with their daily expenditure. Previously, when Abyssal Star City charged 20 silver for its entrance fee, the average expert could still afford to enter the city. However, if the entrance fee were to be raised to 50 silver, even refinement realm experts might hesitate to enter the city. After all, they'd be left with hardly any money after paying the city's entrance fee, renting a hotel, repairing their equipment, and having a meal. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3179 Outside of Abyssal Star City. Outside of Abyssal Star City. After the magic barrier enveloping Abyssal Star City disappeared, the millions of players outside looked at the city eagerly. The changes to Abyssal Star City were visible to the naked eye. The city's size and the mana it radiated to the surroundings were enough to let everyone understand that Abyssal Star City had already surpassed small NPC cities. A huge commotion had even started on the Miniature Ancient Worlds official forums because of Abyssal Star City's changes. Everyone eagerly discussed what sort of changes might have taken place in Abyssal Star City, what they should do immediately after entering the city, and what they could do to make money via Abyssal Star City. At this time, even the Flower of Seven Sins, the Azura Mercenary Alliance's enemy, was filled with curiosity toward Abyssal Star City. Abyssal Star City was already fated to become the Miniature Ancient World's #1 player-owned city. However, exactly how much attention this #1 city could attract from the Miniature Ancient World's players and powers was crucial for the Flower of Seven Sins. Now that the Miniature Ancient World had become a training ground for the various gods' domains rookies, it would more or less attract the attention of some conglomerates. If Abyssal Star City attracted enough players and powers, the greater world's conglomerates might decide to invest in the Azura Mercenary Alliance. Once that happened, the Azura Mercenary Alliance's development would skyrocket. Shadow Fog City, Flower of Seven Sins residents, Big Sis Omen, do you think those conglomerates will really set their sights on Abyssal Star City? Summer Wolf asked worriedly when he saw the ongoing discussions on the official forums. If a conglomerate invests in the Azura Mercenary Alliance, we will most likely be numbered. Before learning about the greater god's domain, players wouldn't know exactly how terrifying the greater world's conglomerates were. However, once one came into contact with some information about the greater god's domain, one would realize that even higher gods' domains wouldn't dare to offend the greater world's conglomerates. An example would be the flower of 7 sins 1,000 scars. Ever since 1,000 scars caught the attention of a conglomerate, the various hegemonic powers in the miniature ancient world had promptly begun treating the flower of 7 sins courteously. However, if Abyssal Star City managed to attract the attention of a conglomerate, the flower of 7 sins would probably cease to exist in the miniature ancient world. After all, there was a big difference in significance between an individual and an entire organization receiving a conglomerate's attention. It wouldn't be difficult to imagine which of the two would receive greater priority from a conglomerate. What are you worried about? There's no way those conglomerates would decide to invest in a power so easily, much less a local power of the miniature ancient world, Death Omen said contemptuously. The Azura Mercenary Alliance would first have to become a hegemonic power and gain control of at least 1/3 of the miniature ancient world if it wants to attract a conglomerate's attention. No conglomerate would care about the small profits generated by Abyssal Star City. Moreover, Abyssal Star City's teleportation hall is only connected to 100 Flow City's teleportation hall. Players will have to go through 100 Flow City before they can teleport to other NPC cities. Abyssal Star City would be fortunate if it could attract even 1/10 of the miniature ancient world's hegemonic powers. I guess you're right. After thinking it over, Summer Wolf nodded in agreement with Death Omen. The greater world's conglomerates wouldn't even glance at ordinary hegemonic powers. Only upper-ranked hegemonic powers and above could receive partnership offers from the various conglomerates. Meanwhile, every upper-ranked hegemonic power was a frightening existence that had successfully established an empire in the greater god's domain and whose rule spanned over 100 god's domains. So, the likelihood of the Azura Mercenary Alliance attracting a conglomerate's attention with the Abyssal Star Primordial City alone was incredibly slim. What's the status of 1,000 scars? Death Omen asked. Whether the flower of 7 sins can secure a stable position in the miniature ancient world all depends on her now. We've delivered all the life potions and combat techniques we purchased to her already. I believe she can achieve further improvements within the near future, Summer Wolf reported. Good. So long as she can become a prioritized core talent, it's only a matter of time before we can make the Azura Mercenary Alliance disappear. Death Omen nodded, her mood improving significantly. Zero Wing's foundations might have exceeded her expectations. However, so long as the flower of 7 sins had a conglomerate to rely on, it wouldn't matter even if Zero Wing had multiple fourth-floor experts defending it. As soon as Death Omen finished speaking, both Death Omen and Summer Wolf received a message notification simultaneously. Is Zero Wing crazy? If it sets the entrance fee at 50 silver, even the various powers will give up on Abyssal Star City, let alone independent players, Summer Wolf exclaimed, a look of disbelief appearing on his face when he finished reading the report on Abyssal Star City's situation. If a power decided to set up an operating base in Abyssal Star City, it would assign a minimum of several thousand members to the city. If every one of these players had to pay 50 silver just to enter the city every day, it would become a significant expense even for the various powers. Not to mention, the level 120+ maps would soon open. Once that happened, Abyssal Star City would become nothing more than a teleportation hub allowing players to reach the Boundary Mountain range much more easily. However, if Abyssal Star City charged an entrance fee of 50 silver per player, nobody would be willing to use the city even as a teleportation hub. After all, players would have to first line up in 100 Flow City to teleport to Abyssal Star City. Rather than waste all that time just to save a negligible amount of money, it'd be much better if they traveled to the Boundary Mountain range by mount. It seems this is all Zero Wing amounts to, Death Omen said, sighing in relief. If Zero Wing freely let the miniature ancient world's various powers enter Abyssal Star City, a large number of powers would flood the city. At that time, there'd be a real possibility of the city attracting a conglomerate's attention. Meanwhile, if the Azura Mercenary Alliance truly managed to gain the support of a conglomerate, Hidden Soul's status would skyrocket, and the flower of 7 sins would become a joke. However, After the stunt Zero Wing just pulled, Abyssal Star City could, at most, attract the attention of local players and powers. The city would have great difficulty attracting the attention of the various foreign powers, let alone conglomerates. At this time, the Flower of Seven Sins wasn't the only one surprised by Abyssal Star City's new rules. This change also caught the various local and foreign powers and players off guard. Is the Azura Mercenary Alliance crazy? Rather than secure itself a good future, it's choosing to target natives only? I doubt even natives will buy into an entrance fee of 50 silver. After all, the level 120 plus maps will be opening soon. All players above level 115 will definitely move their base of operations to the level 120 plus NPC cities. Who would want to settle in Abyssal Star City? 50 silver? Is Azura attempting daylight robbery? Moreover, teleportation fees can only be paid in magic crystals, and each teleportation costs 2 magic crystals. I only earn 3 magic crystals per advanced quest I complete for the Adventurers Association, and I can only pick up 1 advanced quest every 2 or 3 days. I know, right? Repairing epic weapons and equipment already costs a lot of magic crystals. Magical classes might only need to spend around 1 magic crystal per day for repairs, but plate armor classes like us need to spend at least 2 magic crystals even on a good day or 4 magic crystals on a bad day. Is Azura telling us to fight naked? That's not all. Now, even Azura's members are in a miserable state. Although bronze members will still receive discounts when entering the city, they'll no longer qualify to train in the Primordial Tower. Now, only silver members and above can train in the tower. Moreover, the hourly usage fee has increased to 300 magic crystals. Only peak experts could possibly afford such a price. If I have that many magic crystals, I'd rather spend it on buying a basic combat technique from the Greater God's domains. It only costs 200 magic crystals to learn a basic combat technique in our guild. The miniature Ancient Worlds official forums were filled with complaints from both local and foreign players. After seeing the changes to Abyssal Star City's rules, everyone was of the opinion that Abyssal Star City's development would only go downhill from now on. 100 Flow City, Teleportation Hall. I'm afraid Abyssal Star City is beyond salvation now, Maria. Are you sure you still want to establish your trade center there? Favra, holding a silver scepter in her hand, asked as she looked at her niece. Maria was a little dazed when she learned about Abyssal Star City's situation. However, after calming down, she earnestly said, I still plan to take a look at it first. Honestly, Maria was greatly confused by the action Zero Wing took. After all, now that Abyssal Star City had just been upgraded into a basic city, it was the best opportunity to attract the various powers to settle in the city and drive the city's trade. Yet, Zero Wing had chosen to forsake this opportunity. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3180_Misty Canyon, Abyssal Star City. Misty Canyon, Abyssal Star City, Guild Leader. Less than 4 million players are gathered in Abyssal Star City right now. Moreover, the majority of them are Azura's members, and few are independent players and members of the various powers. At this rate, the city's population will just barely exceed 10 million by the end of today. After deducting the city's daily maintenance cost, we would have made a profit of only 4 million gold and 170,000 magic crystals, Blackie reported to Shafong in a somewhat gloomy tone. If we can lower the entrance fee to 40 silver, I'm sure we can max out the city's population limit of 20 million. Currently, the various NPC cities were only charging an entrance fee of 30 silver. With Abyssal Star City's geographical advantage, many players would be able to accept an entrance fee of 40 silver. So, if they lowered the city's entrance fee to 40 silver, they'd have no problem filling the city's population limit of 20 million. After all, many of the miniature Ancient Worlds local players had no way of entering NPC cities. No. It's not necessarily bad to keep Abyssal Star City's player traffic low. If we hit the population limit, Azura's members will likely have to wait in line for a long time, even if we reserve some slots. This will cause their leveling speed to lag behind, Shafong said, chuckling. I'm just a little sad about the lost income. If we can max out the city's population limit, we can earn an additional several million gold per day. In that case, we can buy a few more advanced lineage crystals every day. Not to mention, purchasing silver combat techniques from the various powers is also a considerable expense. Although silver combat techniques aren't as expensive as advanced lineage crystals, each one still costs 150,000 gold. Without these things, it's going to take our guild's main force members a lot more time to grow to an adequate standard, Blackie said, shrugging. But we only have a few days before the level 120 plus maps open. The level 120 plus maps were destined to be the competition grounds for the various powers in the miniature ancient world. At the same time, that was also the best time for the various powers to reveal their strength. However, Zero Wing had nothing to show other than its apex combatants. Its main force members were nowhere near as strong as the various superpowers' main forces. So, how was Zero Wing supposed to compete for resources in the level 120 plus maps? Let the various powers fight for the level 120 plus maps if they want to. For the time being, it's best if Zero Wing and Azura accumulate strength quietly, Shifeng said with a faint smile as he looked at the reluctant look on Blackie's face. So long as our main force members grow adequately strong, Zero Wing's name will shake the world sooner or later. While Shifeng was chatting with Blackie, he suddenly received a message from Su Qianliu stating that the Green God Corporation's representative had already arrived at the God's Domain Association building's entrance. They're here already? After taking a deep breath, Shifeng quickly passed his remaining work in Zero Wing to Blackie before going offline. The greater world. This was the place where everyone would eventually go to live in the future. It was the place where people from many worlds converged. It was also the place where people from many worlds competed with each other for the right to live. Whether a guild could prosper in the greater God's domain depended entirely on whether it could establish a foothold in the greater world. If a guild couldn't establish a foothold in the greater world, it would be as good as finished in the greater God's domain. During Shifeng's previous life, Zero Wing had entered the greater world without any prior preparations. As a result, it had gotten targeted by a conglomerate very early on, which led to Zero Wing encountering numerous struggles in the greater world. At one point, Zero Wing had even nearly been eliminated by the Apex Power Demon's Gate and lost its ownership over its God's domain. However, Shifeng did not intend to repeat his past mistakes. This time, he must lay a solid foundation in the greater world before their God's domain was thoroughly linked with the greater God's domain. Only by doing so could Zero Wing improve its standing in the greater God's domain and reach the apex. Shortly after Shifeng went offline, two women wearing black cloaks to conceal their identities appeared on the Primordial Tower's first floor, their beautiful eyes filled with shock the moment they stepped inside the tower. The mana here has thoroughly condensed into a mist-like state. Abyssal Star City has hidden a truly terrifying strength, Favre muttered as she observed her surroundings with her eyes that had now turned completely silver. In addition, the properties of the mana here are similar to eternal energy in that it can increase players' brain activity by a significant margin. If we factor in the report we received on the tower's miniature worlds, even Refinement Realm players can master advanced bronze combat techniques if given enough time. Mana that resembles eternal energy? Maria fell into a daze when she heard her aunt's words, her mind having difficulty accepting this information. Of course, that wasn't to say that she doubted her aunt's words. On the contrary, she trusted in her aunt's judgment. This was because her aunt was in possession of the Soul Eye skill, an identification skill that allowed the user to see the essence of all things for a short time. Mana that shared similar properties with eternal energy was something that could be of considerable help to even Tier 6 God-ranked experts in their training, let alone helping Refinement Realm players master advanced bronze combat techniques. Meanwhile, the Primordial Tower's ability to provide players with such a mana environment was something that could be incredibly useful to any power in the greater God's domain. This was because third-floor experts, also known as superior adventurers, were incredibly rare. Most of the experts the various powers had under their command were only advanced adventurers who were at the second-floor standard. However, so long as an advanced adventurer mastered a sufficiently large number and variety of advanced bronze combat techniques, it was entirely possible for them to rival ordinary superior adventurers in terms of combat power. If news of the primordial tower were to get out, it would cause an unimaginable sensation even in the greater god's domain. At that time, the various powers would either try to get their members into the primordial tower or acquire the primordial tower. However, so long as Zero Wing could successfully defend Abyssal Star City, it would no longer have to worry about prospering. No matter how many new maps appeared in the miniature ancient world in the future, Abyssal Star City would forever remain the best place for superior adventurers and below to settle in. After Favre turned off her soul eyes, a flash of excitement appeared in her eyes as she said, "We have to act quickly, Maria. If the other conglomerates learn about this matter, we'll have much greater difficulty opening a trade center here." Maria also understood the significance of the matter, so she logged out of the game without hesitation. The process of opening a trade center involved many formalities. The trade center's design also had to be delivered from the greater god's domain, and that was a process that required some time. On the other side, after Shifeng went offline, he took a plane to an isolated island far away from the city under the lead of several Green God Corporation employees. Upon arriving at the island, he found that there was actually an upper zone established on the island. However, unlike the upper zones found in first-tier cities, the one on this island was much smaller. There were also only several thousand people living here. After passing through a series of inspections, Shifeng arrived inside a large room that was situated several dozen kilometers underground. There weren't many people in the room, only 10, excluding Shifeng. Out of these 10 people, the oldest appeared to be in their 40s, while the youngest appeared younger than 20. In addition, all 10 of these people were big names that everyone knew on the main continent of God's domain. These people were either known as monsters or peerless geniuses by players. The 5 commanders of the 5 great super guilds' main forces were the most famous among these people. Out of these 5 commanders, the most famous would have to be the mythology's silver ghost Prosciutto. Aside from the 5 commanders, the 5 other people in the room were the secret pavilion's Empress Purple Jade, Divine Tribe's Magic Eye Hunter Phythalia, Miracle's Witch of the West Alice, the Flower of 7 Sins No. 1 Genius Thousand Scars, and last but not least, the legendary adventurer Team Midnight Tea Party's first commander Breeze Wine. Except for Thousand Scars, the other 9 people in the room were all bona fide Tier 6 God-ranked experts. This was a gathering that most players in God's domain would probably never imagine happening. When Breeze Wine, who wore a pair of sunglasses, saw Shifeng entering, he swept his gaze across the others in the room and said, "Since the last person has arrived, we can go now. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 253, Tier 3 Instructor. Chapter 253, Tier 3 Instructor. Inside the isolated room the size of a football field, the 9 other people in the room began scrutinizing Shifeng as soon as they heard Breeze Wine's words. "He is the last person?" Everyone grew confused after they were done scrutinizing Shifeng. Logically, anyone capable of getting into this room shouldn't be a nameless nobody in God's domain. However, aside from Purple Jade, nobody else managed to recognize Shifeng. To further their confusion, Shifeng had an inconspicuous appearance and did not have any presence whatsoever. Did our God's domain have such an expert? Phythalia quietly asked the others around her as she looked at Shifeng strangely. Shaking her head, Alice said, "I've seen every known Tier 6 God-ranked expert in our God's domain. He shouldn't be any of the God-ranked experts we know." Prosciutto and the others weren't surprised when they heard Alice's statement. Aside from the Tier 6 God-ranked experts that had abruptly disappeared, every God-ranked expert in their God's domain had met each other in the real world at least once or twice. In fact, one could easily find the real-life information of all known Tier 6 God-ranked experts on the internet nowadays. However, Shifeng definitely wasn't any of these known God-ranked experts. "I know him," Purple Jade said. "His name is Shifeng. He isn't a God-ranked expert but an instructor of a God's Domain Academy instead. He was a level 200, Tier 3 Sword King at his peak. He used to be the guild leader of the second-rate guild Shadow, but he was dismissed from Shadow and is currently the acting guild leader of Zero Wing. Purple Jade had paid close attention to Wu Lingling ever since the latter had won against her disciple Lei Li. Hence, she naturally looked into Wu Lingling's instructor as well. In Purple Jade's opinion, Wu Lingling possessed an extraordinarily sturdy foundation, and watching the girl carry herself felt like watching an old monster who had trained for many years. So, it wasn't hard to imagine that the person responsible for teaching Wu Lingling possessed incredible knowledge and control over the human body. Even a god-ranked expert couldn't necessarily produce a student of Wu Lingling's caliber. Only, the result Purple Jade got from investigating Shifeng was disappointing. Shifeng was the acting guild leader of Zero Wing, while Zero Wing's true guild leader was Black Flame, a god-ranked expert from a different god's domain. After connecting the dots, it was obvious that Shifeng must have handed Wu Lingling a special training method that he had received from Black Flame. There was also no way Shifeng could be responsible for teaching Wu Lingling since Shifeng was barely a refinement realm expert. Hence, when Purple Jade saw Shifeng appearing in the room and learned that he would be heading to the greater world with their group, she couldn't help but be surprised. The greater world was a very dangerous place. Even someone as strong as Breeze Wine had only recently managed to secure himself a foothold in the greater world. Yet, a refinement realm expert like Shifeng was planning on heading to the greater world. Zero Wing? When Thousand Scars, who wore a white dress, heard Purple Jade's introduction, the gaze she used to look at Shifeng immediately turned cold. Although she had no personal grudges against Shifeng, Zero Wing was the Flower of Seven Sins' sworn enemy. The Flower of Seven Sins had even suffered severe losses recently because of Zero Wing. Originally, Thousand Scars had planned on challenging Zero Wing's guild leader Black Flame after the recent improvements she had made. That way, she could reduce Zero Wing's momentum to a certain extent. However, because she needed to enter the greater world and focus on becoming a core genius of the Paimon Corporation as soon as possible, she had no choice but to give up on challenging Black Flame. Now that she had come across Zero Wing's acting guild leader, she wouldn't mind taking care of him if the opportunity arose. Alright, that's enough talking. All of you put on the quantum watch assigned to you and follow me inside. Breezewine interrupted and pointed at the translucent glass door standing in the middle of the room. If you don't wish to listen to me now, you don't have to listen to me once we reach the greater world, either. Breezewine was the first commander of the legendary Midnight Tea Party. Even though most of the people he was currently dealing with were god-ranked experts, he did not bother being courteous with them. Moreover, he had already proven his strength by securing himself a foothold in the greater world without external help. So, Thousand Scars quickly dismissed her thoughts and followed Breezewine's command. In no time, everyone in the room had put on the quantum watches they had received from the Green God Corporation. Then, they followed Breezewine through the glass door and seemingly arrived in outer space. Upon arriving in this space, everyone immediately took notice of the giant planet before them. The planet was thousands of times larger than the Sun, and countless continents orbited around the planet. These orbiting continents were of varying sizes, with the smaller ones being several times larger than Earth and the larger ones being hundreds of times larger. These continents were like arcs that traveled the universe. A moment later, everyone felt themselves being drawn toward a continent that was roughly 3 times the size of Earth. The density of the continent's air was less than 1% that of Earth, and its gravity was 3 times that of Earth. Many barriers could also be seen scattered across this continent, and many high-rise buildings and human beings could be seen within these barriers. After another 10 seconds, everyone arrived inside one of the many barriers, and the sight of a prosperous and SCIFI-like city entered their eyes. All of you are very fortunate. Thanks to the Green God Corporation's many years of effort, you get to be assigned to a third-tier city and receive citizenship as soon as you arrive in the greater world. You also get to enjoy a long lifespan and youth that cannot be achieved even in the upper zones of our world. In comparison, people from other elementary worlds can only start in third to first-tier towns and rely on mining and collecting various cosmic resources to make a living, Breezewine said as he turned around to look at everyone. Then, a smile appeared on his face as he continued, "But I also have bad news to tell you. Do you want to hear it? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 254, Contention in the Greater World. Chapter 254, Contention in the Greater World. Despite Breezewine mentioning bad news, everyone present behaved as if they didn't hear him, their expressions remaining calm. Bad news. Alice, who had tied her hair into a ponytail and was wearing a light blue sports top, looked at Breezewine curiously. Then, she revealed a faint smile as she asked in a mature tone, "Could you perhaps be talking about how we will only be permitted to live in this city for a month, Commander Wine?" Purple Jade, Prosciutto, Thousand Scars, and the others showed no reaction to Alice's words. This was because they, too, knew about this piece of information. It was something they had learned through the players of the other god's domain. According to the foreign players, although the greater world was a vast world with technology far more advanced than what was available in their homeworld, there was very little space suitable for human life. It was especially true for living spaces like the greater world cities. The number of cities in the greater world wasn't even 1% of the number of towns. Yet, as it just so happens, the resources available in the greater world cities were vastly superior to that of towns. One example of the difference between towns and cities would be the residents' average life expectancy. People living in the greater world's towns could expect an average life expectancy of around 200 years. In contrast, the average life expectancy in even the lowest third-tier city was 500 years. 500 years were enough for a country to change dynasties multiple times during ancient times. Yet, people living in a third-tier city in the greater world could easily outlive ancient dynasties. Not to mention, their bodies could also remain in peak condition for up to 300 years. Unfortunately, there were just far too many parallel worlds. As more and more of these parallel worlds merged with the greater world, it became increasingly difficult for people to live in the greater world cities. Each city could only accommodate a limited population. Normally, unless one came from a world that had managed to establish a city in the greater world, one would have to pay a certain amount of contribution points each month to stay in a foreign world city. Contribution points had to be earned by completing tasks issued by the city. Either that or one could complete quests in the greater god's domain. These were the two main methods a person could earn contribution points through. If a person failed to earn enough contribution points after a month, they would be kicked out of the city. Even Tier 6 God-ranked experts were no exception. Of course, if a person didn't have enough contribution points to pay their rent, they could also purchase contribution points using star coins. Only, contribution points were not easy to come by, and few people were willing to sell them. Even if one chose to sell contribution points, one would typically only sell to close friends and relatives. "It seems you've done your homework," Breezewine said when he saw the confident look on Alice's face. Then, he shook his head and continued, "But this isn't what I'm talking about. Since you have already researched the greater world to a certain extent, you should know that the greater world's various cities will hold simulation battles in God's domain to compete for the greater world's precious resources. These simulation battles will be held at 3 levels, and all participants must be under 50. In order to win these simulation battles, the various cities will form their own city legions to recruit and nurture young experts. The training the various cities offered to their respective city legions might not be comparable to that of the various conglomerates, but it is still vastly superior to the average corporation. This is also why the Green God Corporation is willing to pay the hefty price of bringing all of you to the greater world ahead of time. The corporation hopes you can get selected as a reserve participant during Star Lake City's selection. So long as you can become a reserve participant of Star Lake City's City Legion, not only will you receive Star Lake City's training, but you will also receive the Green God Corporation's resource support. I believe all of you should have been informed about this. However, Star Lake City won't just be recruiting talents from its territory. The selection is also open to the hundreds of neighboring towns and cities. In previous years, there would only be around 200,000 God-ranked experts applying for Star Lake City's selection. This year, however, the number has increased by more than 5-fold. Yet, the city is still only accepting the top 1,000 applicants as reserve participants like always, with the top 100 applicants being able to become official participants directly. Currently, there is only 1 month left until the selection deadline. So, the Green God Corporation only has one requirement for you: Enter the top 1,000 within this 1 month. Over 1 million God-ranked experts are applying for the selection. Purple Jade and the others were greatly shocked. Although they had long known that there were countless God-ranked experts in the vast Greater God's domain, they still couldn't help but doubt their ears when they heard Breezewine's words. It should be known that the various superpowers of their God's domain treated every one of their God-ranked experts as their backbone. Yet, God-ranked experts were only the most common experts participating in Star Lake City's selection. At this moment, Purple Jade and the others weren't the only ones feeling pressured by the information Breezewine had just shared with them. Even Thousand Scars, who had many interactions with the Greater God's Domain's experts due to the Flower of Seven Sins, was experiencing much stress. Thousand Scars might have caught the Paimon Corporation's attention. Still, she needed to enter the top 100 of Star Lake City's selection should she wish to become an internal member of the Paimon Corporation. If she couldn't do that, she'd have to get into the top 300 at the very least to become an outer member. Originally, Thousand Scars had scoffed at this requirement. After all, she was strong enough to be close to entering the top 100 of the Miniature Ancient Worlds God-ranked expert list. However, compared to the God-ranked expert list, the scale of the competition she needed to face in Star Lake City's selection was on an entirely different level. The selection is even open to experts from other cities. Shifeng was a little surprised by this news. It was very rare for a city in the Greater God's domain to recruit experts from other cities. He had only ever heard of such situations happening in the greater world before. Never had he actually seen it happening. He didn't think Star Lake City would be taking such action. After concluding his explanation, Breezewine turned to Shifeng and said, "As for you, Guild Leader Shifeng, Zero Wing has paid for your travel to Star Lake City, so the Green God Corporation does not have any requirements for you. You are free to move independently once you complete your first entrance test." Nobody was surprised to hear Breezewine's words. This was because everyone knew there was no way a Tier 3 player like Shifeng could remain in the city. All of you don't have to worry too much about scoring poorly in the selection. The simulation battle between cities is different from the standard combat in God's domain. Aside from combat standards, the simulation battle mainly tests participants' mental strength standards. Your mental strength standard will directly correlate to the quality of the weapons and equipment you receive in the simulation battle. The greater your mental strength, the better the weapons and equipment you will receive, Breezewine explained as he returned his attention to the others. So, the various cities will place more emphasis on mental strength standards and future potential in their selections. The selection isn't strictly a competition of combat standards. Purple Jade and the others relaxed a little when they heard Breezewine's supplementary explanation. Even so, they still felt a lot of pressure. After all, anyone capable of becoming a God-ranked expert would have extraordinary combat standards and concentration standards. Sometime later, Breezewine and the others arrived at Star Lake City's God's Domain Association. The God's Domain Association was also the largest organization in the Greater World, and it had a branch established in every town and city in the Greater World. Coincidentally, the God's Domain Association building was one of the most spectacular buildings in Star Lake City. The building had over 600 floors and was over 3,000 meters tall. Out of these 600-plus floors, floors 100 and above were reserved as residences for the association's members. The requirements to stay in these residences would increase every 100 floors. Those qualified to live on floors 600 and above were big shots that even conglomerates had to treat with care. Meanwhile, even the weakest person inside the God's Domain Association building had physical fitness at the standard of Hunglian Masters, while more than 30% of the building's occupants were at the standard of Hunglian Grandmasters. There were even replays of duels between Tier 6 God-ranked experts being played in the lobby, the replays free for all to watch and learn from. I recommend that all of you take your first test now. It will give you an idea of your current placings. It will also decide which floors you will stay in the association for this month. Your first month's rent is free. This is the greatest welfare offered by the God's Domain Association to people entering the city for the first time. This will save you from living out on the streets and starving, Breezewine said. Then, he pointed at a long line in the distance and continued, The Green God Corporation has already credited 3 test attempts into your watches, so your first 3 tests will be free. If you want more attempts, you'll have to spend star coins to buy them yourselves. Everyone nodded and felt their shoulders growing a little heavier. It cost 10,000 star coins to attempt the God's Domain Association's test every time. This was nearly the average resident's annual salary in the greater world's various cities. It should be known that anyone capable of living in a city is an extraordinary individual. Yet, even then, these individuals would have to go through great pains just to earn 1,000 star coins a month. Naturally, earning star coins would be even more challenging for people new to the greater world. Although the powers behind them were incredibly powerful in their homeworld, their respective powers had only managed to prepare several tens of thousands of star coins for them. That was only enough for them to make a few extra attempts. Meanwhile, after waiting in line for several hours, it was finally Shifeng's and the others' turn to test their mental strength. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 255, Mental Strength Standard. Chapter 255, Mental Strength Standard. This must be the first time you all are taking the test, right? In that case, I have to remind you of 2 things, the receptionist at the front desk said after scanning Shifeng and the others with a device. The receptionist was a woman dressed in black office attire with long hair that cascaded down her back, and her figure and appearance were comparable to Hidden Soul. Firstly, while you are in the mental space, staying longer inside doesn't mean you will get a better score. Instead, you are scored based on how quickly you can conquer the obstacles on each floor. Secondly, be wary not to push yourselves too far past your limits. Otherwise, you will suffer a mental breakdown, and it is unlikely you'll be able to make a second attempt within a month. Purple Jade and the others nodded when they heard the receptionist member's words, none of them daring to behave disrespectfully to her. Although they didn't know how old the other party was, judging by the dangerous aura they sensed from her, they could tell that the other party's physical fitness was far superior to theirs. A mental strength grandmaster? Shifeng couldn't help but be surprised when he looked at the woman behind the front desk. Mental strength grandmasters were existences that thoroughly transcended mental strength masters. Even in the greater world, a 1-star mental strength grandmaster would be an executive-level individual in the various corporations, while 3-star mental strength grandmasters were existences that even conglomerates would try their best to recruit. Although the God's Domain Association was the largest organization in the greater world, it still wasn't at the level where it could afford to have mental strength grandmasters work as receptionists. So, Shifeng couldn't help but be surprised and confused by this situation. A moment after the receptionist was done giving her advice, a man who had just completed his test walked out of the test hall. At the same time, his result also appeared on the test scoreboard in the lobby. Mental grade, 2-star mental strength master, potential rating, 71, mental strength rating, C, mental control rating, B, overall ranking, 13,452, the receptionist read the man's result. Then, when she looked at the man's somewhat sluggish expression, she sighed and said, another stubborn one who refuses to listen. Next. This scene stunned Purple Jade and the others. The man who had just walked out of the test hall looked no older than 40. An individual capable of becoming a 2-star mental strength master before 40 was an incredibly rare talent even in the various upper zones. Yet, in this place, such a mental strength master couldn't even rank within the top 10,000. Out of everyone present, only Breeze Wine and Shifeng weren't surprised by this situation. The standard of mental strength development available in their homeworld was vastly inferior to even the greater world's towns, let alone cities. This remained true even for the upper zones created by the Green God Corporation. Regardless, Alice was the first in the group to challenge the mental strength test. After entering the mental space for around 10 minutes, Alice walked back into the lobby with a somewhat ugly expression. At the same time, her results appeared on the lobby scoreboard. Mental grade, 2-star mental strength master, potential rating, 87, mental strength rating, B, mental control rating, A, overall ranking, 856. When the receptionist saw Alice's result, she said in praise, You'll have a chance of becoming a 3-star mental strength grandmaster in the future if you already have such standards as a newcomer to the greater world. Good. Beautifully done. Joy appeared in Breezewine's eyes when he saw Alice's result. Although he had long since known that Alice could definitely enter the top 1,000 within the selection period, he didn't think she would accomplish this feat on her first attempt at the selection test. Support us at Hosted Novel. It should be known that newcomers to the greater world for the first time would typically see great improvements in their first month in the greater world. This was also why the God's Domain Association would offer to cover newcomers' food and accommodation expenses for the first month. Alice had scored such a high rank on her first attempt, so it wasn't out of the question for her to get within the top 300 within the next month. Meanwhile, individuals who joined the City Legion would receive significantly different treatment depending on whether they were ranked within the top 100, top 300, or top 1000. After the receptionist finished assigning Alice her room, the many experts in the lobby couldn't help but look at her enviously. Alice was assigned a room on the Association Building's 429th floor. Typically, the residences on such high floors were reserved for Star Lake City's official participants, and these rooms cost 2,000 star coins a day to rent. The average God-ranked expert could only dream of staying in such a room. Yet, Alice could stay in this room free of charge for an entire month. However, Alice's result was only the beginning of a series of surprises for the people in the lobby. As Purple Jade and the others started attempting their test, the commotion in the lobby grew bigger and bigger. This was because out of the 8 subsequent people who took the test, aside from the 2 people who were already over 40 years old, everyone else managed to rank within the top 1,000. As for the 2 who were older than 40, they were ranked within the top 2,000, and they had a high chance of entering the top 1,000 within the next month. This is insane. Where are these newcomers from? I think they all come from the same world. What? They're all from the same world? Are they the geniuses nurtured by an intermediate God's domain? The many God-ranked experts in the lobby began making all sorts of conjectures as they looked at Alice and the others. Due to the nature of Star Lake City's selection this time, individuals capable of ranking within the top 3,000 would already be considered geniuses among geniuses, let alone the top 1,000. Yet, 7 out of 9 newcomers from the same world had managed to enter the top 1,000. Even intermediate God's domains could not produce so many geniuses in the same generation. Not to mention, out of these 9 newcomers, 3 had managed to rank within the top 500, their ranks hovering in the 400s. These 3 people were Magic Eye Hunter Phythalia, Silver Ghost Prosciutto, and Thousand Scars Xue Qian Hen. All 3 had received a potential rating of around 90 and AA ratings for their mental strength and mental control. In addition, there was also Purple Jade, who ranked 514th. These 4 individuals had a high chance of entering the top 100 within the next month and competing against the peerless geniuses of the various higher God's domains. Breezewine grew ecstatic when he saw this outcome. With such results, he could easily complete the task the Green God Corporation assigned to him. After all, the corporation's task was for him, an official participant of Star Lake City, to produce 3 other official participants. When Prosciutto saw Shifeng entering the mental space, he turned to Breezewine and said indifferently, "We've completed our tests already, Commander Wine. Shouldn't we start familiarizing ourselves with the training facilities here? Guild leader Shifeng still hasn't completed his test, Prosciutto. Isn't it too early for us to leave now?" Purple Jade said, frowning. "Is his test result even important?" Prosciutto glanced at Purple Jade. Then, in a contemptuous tone, he said, "He's merely a Tier 3 instructor of a God's Domain Academy. He's not even an ant in God's domain. It is only by luck that he managed to come to the greater world. We have come to the greater world with an important task. The last thing we should do is waste our time on an ant." I agree with Commander Prosciutto. Commander Wine has also previously said that we are free to move independently once we finish our tests. Now that that person has entered the mental space, he no longer has anything to do with us, Thousand Scars said, nodding in agreement with Prosciutto. "If you wish to wait for him, you can wait by yourself, Commander Jade. Do not waste everyone's time." After saying so, Thousand Scars promptly turned around and left. She had no interest in Shifeng's test result whatsoever. She only had one goal in her mind: to enter the top 100 as soon as possible. After seeing Thousand Scars leaving, Prosciutto and the others also left for their respective residences, leaving only Breeze Wine and Purple Jade in front of the test hall. The crowd in the lobby grew confused at this sight, and they couldn't help but wonder if Shifeng wasn't actually from the same world as Thousand Scars and the others. "You should head upstairs with them, Commander Jade. You all will be comrade in arms when you enter the Star Lake Legion in the future. You will meet each other regularly at that time, and you might even have to work together to complete tasks. So, it's best not to strain your relationship with them," Breeze Wine advised Purple Jade when he saw Prosciutto and the others leaving. "It's enough for me to wait here by myself. Zero Wing might have some interactions with the secret pavilion, but Shifeng and Purple Jade were destined to live in completely different worlds." In Breeze Wine's opinion, it would be very unwise for Purple Jade to sour her relationship with Prosciutto and the others for Shifeng. After all, the greater world wasn't an easy place to live in. Take himself, for example. It had taken him several years of struggling in the greater world before he managed to join the Star Lake Legion. Even then, he was only an ordinary official participant. Of course, his slow progress was mainly because he had no companions. If he had reliable companions, he might have reached greater heights. "Thank you for your concern, Commander Wine." Shaking her head, Purple Jade said with determination in her eyes, "You may be right, but I still want to wait." Since learning about Shifeng's existence until now, Purple Jade had never managed to see through the man. Even though Shifeng was clearly only a refinement realm expert, he had earned such high praise from Wu Lingling that the girl refused to become her apprentice. Now that the opportunity to see Shifeng's strength had appeared, Purple Jade naturally had to take a look. Breeze Wine could only sigh in regards to Purple Jade's decision. He simply couldn't understand why Purple Jade was willing to sacrifice her future for the sake of a Tier 3 instructor. Sometime after Breeze Wine and Purple Jade concluded their conversation, a new result appeared on the lobby's test scoreboard. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,